Good morning. I am down in the garden this morning and I need to pick some of my herbs. So this is oregano and I'm going to be picking oregano, parsley, and then I also have some lemon verbena. I'm going to be picking that and then we're going to be putting it into the dehydrator. So let's get to picking and then I'll show you how I get it processed. So with this oregano, what I will do is just grab a handful of it and then just chop it down at the base. So this is down into my oregano, and I will just go down to the base here and just start clipping them off. Throw them into my basket. And the way I harvest these might look brutal, but this is like a rhizomic spreader, so you can see on the roots. And if you just whack it back to the base, it will just send up new shoots, no problem. And it smells divine. I wish you could smell it. I don't want to go too crazy this morning because I don't have a ton of room in my dehydrator. I actually have two different dehydrators, but the one I'm going to be using today, I want to make sure I have room for the parsley and the lemon verbena. So here we are at the parsley, and it's kind of the same thing. I'm just, even though there's little shoots coming up down in here, if you can see them, new little stems, I'm just going to take, kind of brutally clip it. Smells like parsley. And look at the bunch that I have already. I'll see if I can. I have some celery right here too. This was actually volunteer that came up on the outside of the bed just from when they went to seed. I do like to cut the celery leaves and dehydrate them and then grind them into a powder. And I like to use these instead of like celery seed for the flavor in soups or stews, whatever I'm making. But I'm not going to have room on my dehydrator today for that, so we will save that for the next time. And look at this lemon verbena. Oh my goodness. So I'm just going to take this, you can see down in here, and again I'm just going to go down to the base and I'm going to start snipping off some nice stalks. Oh, it smells so good. I like to use this in some teas, some of my medicinal blends. It just is so yummy. I have a thing for growing herbs and plants, especially ones that have really good smell. And this is, I have two of these. One is in a different pot. I might go up there and clip on that one as well. But again, this same plant, it does not hurt it at all to give it a hard whack back. It will just send up new shoots and keep going. Whoops. So I could literally take this whole pot if I wanted to. I'm going to leave a few, but we'll go up and I'll show you my other pot, what it looks like. And here is my second pot of lemon verbena. It's actually up by the house. And I do keep lemon verbena in a pot because it will spread. And I prefer not to have it everywhere. So having a nice little concealed pot, it really helps me to be able to have enough for my needs, but then I'm not fighting trying to keep it under control. It stays right where I want it. That should be enough of that. Okay, so I changed my mind. I think because of the fact, if I can come down here, because of the fact that I have two dehydrators And herbs are really great for dehydrating when they're first coming out and young. They don't, they're not woody, they're tender. And I just think it's not only easier to harvest, but I just feel like I get a better yield and more quality product when I have the younger stalk. So I'm just gonna take some of these celery leaves, get them all bundled up and in my basket. Isn't my basket starting to look glorious? We're gonna go over here now. And if you saw my What's Growing in the Garden week 1, I kind of gave you a little bit of a shot of this bed. This is my original herb bed. It's been here for about 17 years. The herbs have probably been in here close to that long. And I haven't actually done much of anything to them. They just are doing what they want to do, but it's getting to the point I really need to get these more under control. But let's go over here. This is my time, and I think I'm going to work on clipping some of this. And most of my herbs, I just kind of do the same way. I just grab a whole handful of it and chop it off. Get that little bouquet of thyme. Smells so yummy. Alright, now I'm going to work on just getting a few sprigs of this tricolored sage. And the third color isn't quite out on this one yet. It kind of appears more in the early to mid-summer. In the spring, it's just kind of the two, the green and the burgundy tone. Okay, so I now have this gorgeous basket full of herbs, and we're going to take these into the house, and I'm going to show you how I put them on my dehydrator and get them processed. Okay, my first dehydrator is an Aroma Professional. I picked this up at a yard sale for $20. It wasn't even out. The gentleman asked me if I was looking for anything specific, and I said a food dehydrator. He said, "Oh, I have one," and he sold it to me for 20 bucks, and I absolutely love it. This is one that has 6 trays. 5 of them have this little mesh insert that goes on top. The 6th one does not, but they're square trays, and I really like that. So we'll get this one loaded up first. Okay, we are back in the house, and it is actually the day after Easter. If you can tell, my Easter decor is still up in the background. But I just put a bucket on the table, so this was high enough for you to see. But I am going to start loading the trays with the herbs, and then we'll get these ones loaded in the dehydrator, and then I will go get my second one. Okay, so for most of these, with the parsley, I don't really need these long stems. And to get more on here, I could clip them all off like this. And that's usually what I do. I just snip them off to be as short as possible. And the great thing about herbs, especially leafy herbs like this that aren't real woody, is that they dry super fast, even on the herb setting, which is pretty much one of the lowest settings you can get on your dehydrator. I could do a couple of trays of herbs in a day, and it doesn't take up a whole lot of time. So the other great thing too is that you can go do other things while your dehydrator's running and come back and the work's done. Okay, so I'm just going to get these trays all filled up. I don't have to bore you with snipping off each individual thing in slow motion. I'll probably just put you on time lapse. right, this last tray, the one that I was telling you doesn't have that little mesh insert that you can set on top of this, I have just left the leaves attached to the stems of the oregano, because if I don't and I take them off like I did on the other tray, they will just fall right through these cracks and down to the bottom of my dehydrator, which drives me nuts because it's kind of a pain to clean up. So the reason why I pulled them all off on the other one, excuse me, is because when you're done, it just seems like it's much easier than removing them from the stems and getting kind of like stockier pieces into your mix and then having to sit there and sift through and separate them. So it's just easier to take the extra time, at least in my opinion, to do it that way. So I'm curious, put down in the comments what's your favorite herb. I think mine right now has to be oregano because I use it in a ton of my sauces when I can. And then I also make my own homemade fajita mix, and that calls for oregano. So I tend to dry multiple batches of this every year. Okay, I have it all loaded. Down on the bottom, we have 2 trays full of oregano. We have about 1 1/4 trays full of thyme, and then we have about 2 3/4 trays full of the parsley in this dehydrator. So I'm going to put the cover on, and then up here is the setting, and it shows where you need to have it for herbs, which is at 100 degrees, and right now mine is set a little high, so we're going to get it set about 100 degrees, thereabouts. I'm going to turn it on, and now we're going to work on the next one. And my second dehydrator is the standard Nesco. I know a lot of people have this one. I have had it for years, as you can tell from the yellowing of the original trays, and I have purchased several like additional trays just to add its capacity. And these trays, I don't know, I'm not super thrilled with them. You can kind of see the difference. The original trays have this little lift on them, and then these replacement trays that I bought don't. I don't know if it makes a whole lot of difference, but I don't know, I feel like they're a little cheaper, a little wonkier. They kind of have a bow to them. But for herbs, I guess it doesn't really matter. So let's get this one loaded. And just like I did with the parsley, I'm going to do the same thing with the celery. I'm going to try and leave a little bit more stem on the celery than I did with the parsley, because the openings on the Nesco trays are a little bit larger than the mesh on my other one, and like I was talking about, the one that doesn't have that insert, the leaves, once they shrivel up into their dehydrated state, just fall through, and I probably will have that problem, but it is what it is, I guess, right? So I will work on this and come back when we're all done. Okay, so on my Nesco, we ended up with 2 trays of parsley, and I left the stems on this tricolored sage because there is a lot of little leaves, if you can see that on here, and they just go everywhere when they dry. So I deal with pulling those off the stems later. So we had 2 trays of the tricolored sage, and then we ended up with, I believe, 4 trays, yep, of the lemon verbena. So I will get the lid put on this one. And again, this one also has to be set at about 100. So we will just make sure that the dial is as close to 100 as possible. And then I just wanted to show you too, for my Nesco, I do have a few of these little mesh trays. I just didn't use any of them today. I have these silicone trays, which are good for, you can dehydrate eggs, or you can do fruit roll-ups, fruit snacks. And that's kind of what these original plastic ones were, but it just is kind of easier to bend these ones to peel things like that off. But yeah, I have those. I don't have them for my square one, and I'm not sure if I'm going to buy any. I'm tempted, but I really would love to get a freeze dryer, but that's just not in the budget, so we'll see. So I went to finish the video last night, and I went and reviewed it, and I had chopped my head off. So we are in the next morning, and there were a few of the herbs that weren't finished drying in the round Nesco dehydrator. It really isn't as efficient as my square one, and so what I did is I transferred particularly the tricolored sage, some of the parsley, and some of, actually I think all of the lemon verbena leaves. I put them into the square dehydrator and got those finished up. So this morning I am going to work on getting these separated and put into the containers. And all I do is, you can kind of see the stem that comes off of the main branch for the leaf. I'm not really a fan of those, so it's kind of tedious, but I like to sit and just break off the leaves from the stem, and they snap pretty easy. But I'm going to work on that. Sometimes they get in there. And then as soon as I get this all finished, I will show you how I package them up, the type of containers that I use, and the labels that I put on them. Okay, I got the sage all separated from the stems, and for me it's just a personal preference, but if you were to grind this up, you probably would never even notice the stems and it wouldn't make a difference. But I tend to just kind of grab a handful or a pinch and crush them up in my fingers, because I like little bits of the leaves when I do my sauces. But what I'm going to do is, I have these little containers. Now, these are old, I don't know if they're really old, but they're little jam containers. This one, see if I can get see if you can see that cute little design on the top there. The standard ones are the cute little plaid lids, but I use these for herbs that I don't do a whole lot of, and sage is one of those. So I'll just take it and dump it in there, put it on, and then I'll get a label on this. Now, I tend to dry herbs that mostly I work through within 1 year, so I don't vacuum seal any of them. But if I did, in the past, excuse me, I would vacuum seal more than I really needed. And what I would tend to do is then put them, after I get them all separated from the stems, or if I feel like maybe I want to just be extra sure, I would then put them on a more solid tray like this, or the solid plastic one that I showed you earlier. I'd put them back in the dehydrator and run them again for another couple of hours, just to be 100% sure that there was absolutely no more moisture in those leaves before I vacuum seal them. So this is the lemon verbena, and I am just going to leave the leaves whole on these. And then all I do is I pick up this little mesh tray, and you can very gently bend it, and then I can just pour them all right into the container. That's one thing I love about these little mesh trays, is they're flexible, and you can kind of use it as a funnel to get them all directed into your container. Overflowed. Just kind of lightly press them down in there so I don't break them up too much. And then this one just has a little metal lid. Now, most of these containers I find at thrift stores, the Goodwill. We have like a St. Vincent de Paul, and garage sales, estate sales, things like that. And actually, I think I got these at an estate sale right around the corner from me not too long ago. But I have those. And again, these little jelly jars. I do have standard, I use the canning jars. They're kind of a hot commodity for me, so I don't like to use too many of my jars. But this is actually the celery powder. You can see just kind of how fine it is and moves around in there. I haven't processed the leaves that we just dehydrated yet, but that's kind of what it looks like. And I literally just purchased a little coffee grinder, just one of those small ones, from the thrift store for I think about $3 or $4, and that's what I use to just whirl up small batches. I also have this type of container, which is just one of those flip snap lock, whatever you call them, type of lids with the rubber gasket around it, and I just think they're so cute. And you can see the little label on here. This is chamomile flower that I did last year, but what I did is at the dollar store they have packets like this of little chalkboard labels, and they have this design and the design that you just saw in the chamomile and a few others. And I picked up, I think like a 2-pack of fine tip chalk marking pens off of Amazon, and that's just what I use to label my dried herbs and some of my apothecary things. Which, speaking of which, I am probably going to do that in a separate video because it's just a whole exciting thing to me. I have tons of herbs and some other items for my apothecary, and I'm really excited to get that all set up. So if you're enjoying this kind of content, I would be so honored if you would subscribe and become part of the family here. It really helps our channel. And I just want to thank you for hanging out with me today, and I hope to see you next time.